Chucky wanna play?
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
I am the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's work.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
They're here.
Welcome to the next episode of the Gruesome Task podcast. My name is Deonte, and I'm here today with my host,
Jose. It's very good to be here. Let's get this week going.
Yes, and I'm very excited today as we're nearing the end of season 1 of the podcast. We have just a couple more weeks to go. Today we are doing the 1974 blaxploitation film Abby, and we got quite a bit of fun facts for that. Before we get into the movie, you can follow us on social media at Gruesome Task Podcast on Instagram, at the Gruesome Task on Twitter. You can follow myself at xdeontems on Instagram and at _ under the knife on Facebook. Twitter. Where can they find you, sir?
On Instagram at j.a.gallegos, and then I'm on Twitter at Spirited Jose. Reach out to us. Let's talk about some movies.
Yes, and as always, you can hit up the horror pack using code ITFOLLOWS to save yourself $3 on the DVD or the Blu-ray subscription. So with that, let's go ahead and hop into this here. We got the movie Abby. Go ahead and hit us with some details on the film.
Of course, yeah. So we got 1974's Abby that was released on December 25th. So about Christmas time. The film comes in at 1 hour and 29 minutes. It was written by William Girdler, who's credited with the story of it, and Gordon Cornell Lane, who's credited with the screenplay. It was directed by William Girdler. The producers are William Girdler, Mike Henry, Gordon Cornell Lane, and David Sheldon. Our budget came in at $100,000, and the gross was $4 million, which is surprising considering how long this film was actually put out. And then our cast. So we got William Marshall, who actually played our previously reviewed Blackula. But in this movie, he plays Bishop Garnett Williams. Terry Carter played Reverend Emmett Williams. Austin Stoker played Detective Cass Porter. Carol Speed played our Abby Williams. Juanita Moore played Miranda Mama Porter. Charles Kissinger played Dr. Hennings.
Yep, and super excited with my man, Dr. Williams, who appears in this movie because he was, of course, in Blackula, which we covered in the very, very beginning of this podcast, and he is one of the standouts of this movie, to say the least.
Oh, for sure. I was really excited. I didn't know going into this film that he was going to be in this one, and I really loved him in that Blackula role, so it was definitely I was very excited to give him a go again and see what else he can bring to the table.
Yes, and for, as usual, I always mention where you can watch or buy the movie. Now, when it comes to buying the film, that's where it gets a little tricky. Don't go on Amazon, as most of the copies on Amazon are not shipped and sold through Amazon. They're from third-party sellers, and they're selling them for outrageous prices, upwards of close to $100. Your best bet is actually to go through eBay, and there's some sellers that are selling sealed copies of a version for, I believe it was around $25 shipped. There's some other copies that are way, way more expensive, but just avoid those ones because it's kind of interesting enough. There's like a double feature version with a movie called Magdalena, which is a movie about a lady getting possessed by a demon, and that split movie goes for around like the $64 mark. So yeah, just stick with that $25 one. The way that we watched the movie, however, was through YouTube. So if you're interested in watching it, just search up the movie Abby 1974. You should find the entire movie.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was pretty interesting that we couldn't find it anywhere. It wasn't on Amazon. It wasn't on Vudu. Nothing like that. I couldn't rent it for anything. And I just got really lucky coming across it on that YouTube, and they put it up there. For I don't necessarily think it has any like copyright issues because it looks like it's been up there for a while, and a lot of people in the comments definitely believe this is the correct movie and the correct sequence. And it doesn't look like anything was taken out. So, um, yeah, just thought that was pretty interesting. But other than that, I really don't have any more facts about the movie other than the fun facts for later. Do you have anything you want to touch on?
No, I didn't have anything I wanted to touch on. Only thing I wanted to mention is when I looked at the runtime of the film, it matched up with the YouTube version. So I would go, believe that that is the right one.
Okay, yeah, I definitely agree. I looked at that this as well. All right, I think we can definitely get into this movie, Abby, 1974. Let's get into it. So the movie starts off. You get an opening sequence, and you get Garnett Williams, which is the doctor or bishop, uh, reverend, a lot of different things he's called during the film, and he's with his students. So he's also a teacher, and they're discussing him leaving. He's going to Africa to do research in these caves, and his students are also throwing him like this last or this kind of little party before he leaves, and they're giving him a gift. And before he can open that gift, there's this one student who claims he's a journalist, and he's also doing a thesis paper about this being called Eshu. And Dr. Garnett Williams had mentioned that he had touched on Eshu the week before, and this is where he really starts discussing about the followers of Eshu and how they rejoice in evil and violence, and he really touches a lot on that, and they're going back and forth discussing it, all while other students are telling him to open the gift that they got for him.
Yeah, one of the things that he mentions to the students is he says this quote. He says, Eshu is the most powerful of all earthly deities. Eshu is a trickster, creator of whirlwinds and chaos. And so it kind of, that quote kind of foreshadows some of the stuff that ends up happening later on in the film, and some of the, I guess, possibilities, if you will, that do occur. But they give him that necklace, and it's like a big cross. It's very, very big. And the next scene is from, if I don't believe, besides they do like the title, Abby, it goes across the screen, is when he's in the cave, correct?
Yes, they do the whole, I guess, more of the opening sequence, and it's more of that funk music, and you get all the credits rolling in, and then they're in the cave. Yes.
Okay. So he's in a cave, and he's there with two other gentlemen, and he ends up finding it's this kind of box, and he's feeling around it. He mentions that it's hollow, and he essentially opens it up, and when he opens it, that's when he unleashes what we find out is a spirit. When the spirit is, I guess, which is something you see a lot of times in the film, is it kind of looks like a big gust of wind. Everything's being blown all crazy. We see both of the other two guys like fly across the cave, and Dr. Williams, he's trying to hold on to the wall, and we see him fall to the ground, and then it cuts to the next scene.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty interesting because he definitely survives this, of course. He's a big character. But the crew that he was with, they were really blown away, and they were, I guess, presumed dead. Like, they just were hanging there, lying there on the floors, and they were really just thrown around. And another thing I thought that was pretty interesting during the scene is that he's noticing this box, and he notices these figures and how they're very sexual. And earlier, when the students are where that one student was discussing the different, I guess, shapes that Eshu could really portray, was a god of sexuality, and that's where that sexuality comes when it's noticed on the box. But we go into the next scene after he gets blown away and everything, and the winds go all crazy. We get this view of a house, a new house, and we get Mama Porter, Abby, and Emmett. They're moving into their new home. This is where the church has kind of provided a home for them, and this is where they're going to do their worship and really take charge of, leading that church. And their Abby's brother Cass arrives, and he's helping them move in as well. And this is where we just kind of get a feel for who these characters are. We get a lot of love between Emmett and Abby. They're married, and Mama Porter is really supportive of their relationship and how they're really following in God's footsteps and so forth.
Yes, and before I talk about that, I did actually want to mention, so maybe I'm dumb, but in that original scene in the cave, I thought there was a possibility that Dr. Williams had died.
Oh, really? Yeah, it is definitely a weird scene because everyone just flies all over the place and it looks like a lot of people are dead, especially Dr. Williams.
So this is me, I'm kind of bad with this, but a lot of times when I watch movies, if something isn't necessarily told to me, I start to think ahead and make assumptions in my mind of this is probably what's going to happen. So with me doing that, I thought that there was a possibility that all three gentlemen died. Dr. Williams, being a prominent character, had died, and the spirit that came out of the box was basically going to, since it had killed him, was going to go into his body and take control of it. And as we come to find out later on, Dr. Williams is, of course, the father of Emmett, that there would have been some type of story involved with him going back to the family and maybe trying to harm them, kill them, whatever the case may be. That's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah, that definitely would have been an interesting take. They really just left that open for interpretation, and there was a lot of different ways that definitely could have gone, but that's not necessarily what happens. But it's interesting that you saw it that way.
Yeah, and we of course find out I was wrong. But with this family, they're moving in, they're all happy and everything, and we end up getting where there's this like scene where it's nighttime. The Emmett and his wife Abby are moved into the home, and it gets very dark, and there's this creepy music that's playing, and the camera is winding up the stairs of the house, and it goes into a kind of like a guest room possibly, or maybe it's their room, but you don't see them at first. You just see this like chair, and the winds, that gust of wind I mentioned earlier, is blowing and blowing and blowing, and it causes a ruckus and wakes up Emmett. And Emmett wakes up Abby and says, like, oh, what was, did you hear that? What was that? And she's like, did you wake me up? Did you really just wake me up? Like, I'm still sleepy. And she says, like, oh, are you using this as an excuse, essentially to have sex? And he's just like, well, no. But then they end up doing the do anyway, and it just gets forgotten about. So, and then it cuts to the very next scene after that.
Yeah, so we're in the next morning and Abby is showering, and for a while she just looks normal showering there, but then a bunch of steam starts coming in, and you can just kind of imagine how hot the water must be getting because the steam really fills up the room, and she's enjoying the burn. She's like moaning, and she's really enjoying that burn. And then it cuts to a scene or a shot of the outside where the camera is pointing at the curtains, and you get that shadow of her, and then this other big shadow, almost like a creature looking, and it just kind of goes into her. I thought that was a pretty good shot, and I really like that because this creature just kind of looks like it's going into her, and that's kind of what a possession looks like. That creature is really that demon, or whatever really went into her really just overtook her, and I really did enjoy that shot a lot.
Yeah, it was a really good shot. Great camera work there on this one. The scene was really weird because like she was moaning like crazy. I wasn't listening to this in headphones. I'm like, my family's gonna be thinking I'm watching something else in here. I ain't watching Abby 1974. I'm watching Abby on the Hub or something. But man, like Yeah, it was weird, and you get that big creature, which at this point you, as a viewer, you kind of realize that this, because the way that they did the creature as well is it's over her, and you see these kind of arms come up under her as if it's kind of grabbing her, and so we can assume that it's taken control of Abby or it's gotten Abby, something along those lines. And the very next scene after that we get is she's walking downstairs to take the laundry down there, and she looks completely normal, like everything's fine. And when she's down there, she starts throwing the stuff into the dryer, and the door just shuts, like what a lot of horror movies is, out of nowhere. So she gets kind of scared, and there's this like weird voice too that's in the background, which I don't, I guess is the demon's voice, and we get that crazy wind once again it's in so many scenes here, and it's doing all the blowing and blowing and blowing, and she's like yelling for help. And then I thought this was weird because it stops, the door opens, and then she goes from being all scared to just like, okay, and then goes upstairs. Like, why are you still not worried? Like, the door just opens, and you think everything's okay after having all this crazy gust of air and all this other stuff. Like, I just thought that was really weird.
Yeah, I definitely feel like this is where she really got possessed. And yeah, she just looks like after when she's walking away, it's really looks like she just doesn't have any emotion at all. And she just kind of goes upstairs without any worry, any, reaction to what just happened. So that's what I took from it.
Okay, I could see that. See, I didn't really think of that because while I assumed in the previous scene she got possessed, I will say that I felt like they did a good job because she was so normal for this scene for most of it. It made me forget that she had been succumbed by this demon, and I thought she was normal. That's why I was like, why didn't she react? But it makes sense because she's a demon. She goes back and forth between being herself and, I guess, this demon.
Yeah, I thought it was really contradicting, the shower scene and then leading to this, because you kind of get that, after both scenes that she's now possessed. But I mean, why have another scene where it looks like she's getting possessed after the shower scene where it looks like she's getting possessed, by the shadow and stuff? I thought that was very contradicting.
Yeah, it was. And there's a lot of scenes that are really weird that we'll get into, so I'm not surprised with that. The next one after that, this movie jumps quite a bit. There's a lot of scenes in this film. We end up getting there at the table talking, and it is Emmett, Abby, the brother, and the brother's wife, correct?
No, it's
Or is it
Mama
mom?
Porter.
Mama Porter. Okay. And so they're all at the table, and Abby's brother's asking, hey, about the father, and wondering like where, what he's doing. And he says like, oh, Dr. Williams. So that's where we get, okay, Dr. Williams, Emmett, they're related. And he says, yeah, I try to get in contact with him, but I couldn't get a hold of him. He's in Nigeria and all that kind of stuff. And they're saying, oh, well, you're following your father's footsteps, being and everything, because Emmett was a preacher. And they just kind of chit chat a little bit more. Nothing too important that I could think of. If you did have something, I'll definitely add it. And then Emmett says like, oh, to a toast, and he holds up his glass, and it just shatters. And then it cuts to the next scene right away.
The thing I guess I took from this scene, it was that he really stresses that he doesn't envy his father, because his wife Abby was saying that it must be really lonely for him being out there, but he must be doing what he loves. And he's like, well, I don't really want that life. I have a happy life here with my wife and my family, and I'm doing something that I love to do. So that's what I took from it. He doesn't really envy his father. But after that scene, we get Abby in the church, and she's singing. And then when she's done singing, Emmett does, he starts preaching. He starts doing his little sermon, and Abby starts choking while he's doing it, and she really just like loses her breath, and she's choking. They have to escort her out of the church to try to get some air. But this little scene when she's outside, like it just cuts so fast. It looks like she's strangling somebody, or she's like, on top of somebody. And Mama Porter goes outside to try to pull her off, but it cuts like right when she tries to pull her off. So I thought that was really weird.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that in a moment. You actually skipped like two scenes. The scene first was the one of her cutting the chicken. That's the first where we get Abby like acting weird.
Okay, yeah, you're right. My bad.
Yeah. She's for those listening, Abby's inside of the house with the mom, or maybe she's at the church. I'm not too sure, but she's in a kitchen basically, and she's cutting chicken. And as she's cutting the chicken, she looks down at her hand and she sees all the blood from the chicken. And it's as if like she's getting aroused by this blood. She starts to lick her lips very oddly. And then next thing you know, she takes this knife and she starts cutting into her left arm. And she basically just like starts at the middle of her forearm and it just starts going down in a straight line, seeing the blood ooze out of her arm. The mom notices and says like, Abby. And immediately Abby kind of snaps out of this trance that she was in and faints. And right after that, it kind of cuts over to where Abby's in bed and the mom's comforting her, and Abby's saying like, oh, like am I like Abby's more herself at this point. She's not understanding why she did this. She's wondering if she's gonna be okay, all this stuff, and the mom's basically telling her, everything's gonna be okay, Abby, like you're fine, like I'm here for you, all this kind of stuff. And then that's when it jumps over to that church scene.
Okay, so yeah, you're right. I definitely had that in my notes. I just got it all mixed up here. So yeah, after that church scene, she's singing, she loses her breath, they go outside, and then it looks like she's strangling somebody on the floor, and then it cuts right there. And after that scene, Emmett gets a call from his father. It's late at night. He's getting a call from his father, and he starts telling him of Abby and how she's been acting weird, and he doesn't really know what's going on. But his father just kind of dismisses it, and this is the Dr. Williams from earlier at the beginning. And he just kind of dismisses it, saying, maybe it's just temporary, just kind of take care of her, and she should start feeling better. And then it goes to Emmett upstairs. He comes out of the restroom, and he tries to kind of seduce his wife, Abby, and, he's calling her beautiful and so forth. And this is where we first get that demon voice out of her, and she's telling him that she's not one of his playthings, and she uses some vulgar language. Of course, it's a demon, and she just ends up kicking him in his private areas, and he just goes down. And it is just definitely weird scene from that demon, especially if you associate it with that issue from earlier where they call him the god of sexuality. So her being, or that demon being reserved from that, and really just denying that, saying that they don't want it, and that they're not his wife and so forth. It's definitely something that contradicts that as well.
Yeah, that scene was kind of funny, but it's also so odd to me. I know that it's a movie, so you have to suspend disbelief a little bit, but the fact that Abby's talking in this deep voice, and it's obviously clearly not her, but yet Emmett's just so much like, this is my wife, like something just must be wrong. It's like, dude, she's talking in like this weird demonic voice. What, this isn't your wife. Why are you just like pretending that things are normal? And as the film goes on, you'll see as Abby does more things, Emmett is there by his wife's side the entire time, and and all these scenes, his wife's doing this crazy demonic stuff, and she has this deep voice, and yet it just doesn't click with him. So I don't know. I just think that's weird. But the next thing that we end up getting is where I believe it at that point it's Emmett. He's sitting on the front porch, and Abby's brother walks up, and he asked him like, "Hey, man, has Abby ever done anything a little weird in the past? She ever have any issues?" And he's like, "No, no, she's fine. You know, my sister's great." And then Emmett hints at Abby if she had ever taken any type of drugs or been on any type of drugs, and he he basically says like, "What are you assuming that she took drugs?" And Emmett doesn't say anything, and he says, "Oh, you're being serious." And he's like, "No, no, no." And so yeah, that's where Emmett's, I guess, trying to do a little bit of investigating to find out like, hey, what's causing this, but doesn't really find out much.
Yeah, and then it cuts over, and Abby's with this couple, and she's a marriage counselor, so she's all fine. She's really telling them that she's never done it before. This is their first couple, and she's really just learning, because she's so young as well, in a very young marriage as well, and that she's just gonna really try to process everything with them and try to help them as much as possible. But Emmett enters, and of course he's very supportive. He's trying to be helpful, good husband, and so forth. But Abby turns into this demon. So it seems like every time Emmett comes around, it's probably because he's that preacher and he's a reverend, that this demon really just kind of takes over because it doesn't really like the fact that he has a strong presence of God. So it takes over, and immediately it just becomes sexual, saying that she wants to take that couple, the husband of that couple, upstairs and really just have her way with him, or his way with him, whatever the demon is. And yeah, I thought that was really interesting. That's really where I really noticed that Emmett's presence was really the cause of that demon coming out of Abby.
Yeah, that scene was pretty crazy. I wasn't really expecting that to happen. Um, and when that does happen, Emmett immediately takes Abby upstairs, and he's we get this split second where Abby is back to normal, and she's pleading with Emmett, saying, "I need, like, help me, please." And so Emmett goes and he puts his arm around Abby to comfort her, and she goes straight back to being a demon and says like, "You want to, F Abby, don't you? You want to F Abby, don't you?" And she throws him on the bed, and the demon Abby is just slapping him like crazy, and it cuts right to the next scene, which this movie does a lot. I feel like as when a scene's kind of not necessarily maybe in the middle, but as things are going on, it just immediately cuts, which is, I feel like, something that like a lot of sitcoms do, right? Like you have a sitcom where maybe some guys are at a bar, and then there's like a scene where, I don't know, maybe one's gonna hit on a girl or something, and as he's hitting on her, the girl says like, "Nope," and then like it just cuts to the next scene before like you get her walking away. This movie does a lot of that type of stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's very, very weird, and very fast paced as far as the scene progression. But I mean, a lot of the scenes aren't necessarily valuable in a way. Um, there's a lot of filler in between these. Like, we're hitting you know, the right points. We're hitting and summarizing each scene, but these scenes kind of go on for a while, and they're really just discussing a lot of filler stuff. So, um, I definitely didn't enjoy that part of it, but I mean, we cut to the next scene here, and this is where Miss Wiggins goes and visits Abby, kind of by the order of Mama Porter. Mama Porter feels like Abby needs a companion to kind of help her through the day, so Miss Wiggins shows up, and I mean, this demon just like immediately just starts attacking Miss Wiggins, saying, your husband's dead. You're not really married, so why are you calling yourself Mrs. Wiggins? She brings up that the fact that the husband only got to sleep with her one time, and then he just died and left her alone. And this is where the room just kind of starts floating. Things start flying again. That wind really picks up. She's throwing around Miss Wiggins up against the wall. She throws her up against the other wall. And then she gets onto the bed and she starts foaming at the mouth. but before that, she slaps Miss Wiggins around, and the furniture starts flying. And then she gets on the bed, starts foaming at the mouth, and Miss Wiggins just kind of collapses to the floor, and it looks like she's dead. And Emmett comes home, and he starts hearing the deep voice of Abby. Then Abby's really just like saying a lot of stuff about killing, like she enjoys killing, or the demon really enjoys killing, and how Mrs. Wiggins' death is, really enjoyable for that demon. And so Emmett comes home. He goes upstairs and sees Mrs. Wiggins on the floor. She's not moving. He presumed dead, at least for the audience as well. And then he looks at Abby, and Abby's face looks very shocked, and it just looks very shocked. Like I don't know. It's very hard to describe that face. It's definitely shocked me. Like I don't know if it was Abby really coming back and seeing what happened, or if it was a demon pretending like I didn't know what happened.
Yeah, and also she had all that weird white foam coming out of her mouth while she was looking crazy. Um, which the white foam makes appearances through random points in the movie as she's acting all wild. It was a really weird kind of crazy scene, and right then we end up getting where the what are they called, the paramedics, they end up coming, and he's the paramedic guy's talking to Emmett, and they say like, oh, she died of a heart attack. And then he was like, oh yeah, there's no foul play or whatever, but they said how she got the heart attack is what we're trying to figure out. And it's just kind of, weird stuff. And they're not accusing that it was necessarily Abby or anything, but Emmett suspects that, as weird as she's been acting, that she had to have something to do with it. So Emmett ends up calling his father, Dr. Williams, and tells him, hey, like, Abby's getting worse. Abby may have killed someone. I need help. So Dr. Williams tells him, "Oh, okay, like, I'm gonna be in town in about a week or so, and that way I can come down, but you need to get her to a hospital ASAP." And as soon as Dr. Williams gets off the phone, you get that weird crazy wind that blows through the office, and him and the other guy that's in the office with them are, I guess, trying to hold on to stuff so they don't fall over, which I guess we can assume by this wind is that this demon or spirit, whatever you want to call it, it knows what's going on, like, as whatever's Emmett's doing when he talks to his father, and whatever Dr. Williams is doing. So it can kind of sense, okay, Dr. Williams is on his way.
Yeah, and then it cuts over, and Abby's in the hospital when they're doing a bunch of tests. There's a bunch of machines, a lot of CAT scans, really just trying to figure out what's wrong with her. And the doctor eventually talks to Emmett and Mama Porter and says that there's no physical thing wrong with her. There's really nothing to on his end to explain why she's acting the way she is. And then he mentions and recommends that she see a psychiatrist. And Mama Porter then butts in. She's like, "No, my baby's not crazy. There's nothing wrong with her. She doesn't have a mental illness." And she just starts panicking. She doesn't know what's wrong with her child, and she doesn't believe that. So then Emmett goes and he visits Abby, and Abby's finally in a bed, and she's relaxing with the nurse and saying how the nurse is very polite. And that nurse leaves, and as soon as she does, the demon comes out in Abby again, and you get that deep voice, and it thanks Emmett for calling his father. And then this is where we get more of that that revenge that this demon wants on Emmett's father, Dr. Williams. And yeah, I thought that was it just confirmed my theory of Emmett really bringing this demon out, and it's not really wanting anything to do with anybody else except him, and now noticing, and from what it said, the father for sure.
Oh yeah, and I will say this, while the movie is whatever, the actress that played Abby did pretty darn well, especially in these scenes where she's having, she goes from being herself to converting to the demon. That's done pretty darn well. And what ends up happening is we end up getting a scene where Dr. Williams ends up coming, and he's there. Emmett meets him at the airport, and they say, "Oh, can we stop at home first before we go to the hospital?" He says, "Okay." And then we get Abby, who's in her normal clothes, and she's busting out of the hospital. And the nurse and everyone's like, like, please stop, Miss Williams, please stop. And Abby's just not stopping. She ends up escaping, and the next scene goes to Dr. Williams and Emmett in their home. They come in, and who's there waiting for them? None other than Abby.
Yeah, I thought that escape scene was pretty interesting because we get to see how powerful this demon is. Because Abby is a small woman. She's not, strong, and she doesn't look very muscular or anything. But I guess with the demon's power, she's throwing around nurses like crazy. She's pushing people to the side, and they're flying off. And so I thought that was really the showcase of that, how powerful this demon could be. But Abby's waiting for them at home, and Emmett is questioning, like, why is she home? How did she get there? Did the hospital release her? Was it okay? And the whole time, Abby's just kind of, pushing that to the side, saying, they couldn't hold me. I just wanted to come home. I wanted to be here and to greet your father. And then they sit down on the couch, and Abby starts flirting with Dr. Williams, saying how he's so handsome. And immediately Dr. Williams puts a stop to it and says, "No, this isn't Abby. I kind of know what's going on here."
Yeah, he knows what's going on, and Abby ends up changing back to this like demon, and she ends up saying how, like, she only wants Dr. Williams. And Dr. Williams is like, "I command you to leave the body of Abby," and all this stuff. And as he's doing that, the demon's just unaffected, and she ends up throwing, because Dr. Williams tells the son Emmett, like, grab her now. And Abby throws Emmett, or like just pushes old boy across the room, and then she ends up pushing Dr. Williams as well, and she ends up leaving. And it's like this weird scene where the wall closes, which I thought was weird, because it was kind of those movies where you see like a bookshelf that's like a secret room and it moves, and that's what the wall did. But that was just a normal living room before, so it's like, where did all this extra wall come from? It just like came through and closed. And then all this crazy stuff started happening. Those gusts of wind came. You had like thunder and lightning and all this like creepy music. There's a point where I guess like lightning strikes this lamp and it catches fire, and it's like totally weird. And something gets like tossed, or like a window breaks, and Emmett runs out, and he's just like, "I'm going after Abby." And Dr. Williams says, "No, don't." But Emmett goes anyway, and then he steals a car.
Yeah, so he steals this woman's car, says it's urgent, and just leaves her there in front of his house. And then he's off, and he shows scenes of him just driving, trying to look for his wife. But then it cuts back, and the police are now there with that lady who he stole the car from. And Dr. Williams is out there trying to, I guess, manage the situation, make sure that Emmett is in too much trouble. But then Cass, who's Abby's brother, shows up. And this is where we get more of that sense that he's that detective figure. And he kind of tells the cops, like, "Oh, just kind of wrap up what you're doing. This is a family matter. If you guys can go away." And so he starts talking and realizes that Dr. Williams is there, and he's saying he's getting calls about Abby going out of control, about Emmett stealing cars, and he's just really wondering what's going on. And Dr. Williams starts explaining what's really going on. He says that the forces have taken control, and that Abby is kind of possessed, and they need to relieve her of this demon by the end of the night, or she could possibly die. And the whole time, Cass really doesn't understand, and he doesn't really believe that this is, really happening to his sister. Yeah, and then it cuts over to Emmett, and he goes to a phone booth, and he's trying to give a call, but he gets a call in this phone booth, and it's actually from the demon, or Abby, and of course it's that dark voice, that deep voice, and I just don't understand how he believes this is his wife instead of something that's possessing her.
Yeah, it's like, and it's so funny too because the demon talks and he's like, "Who is this?" And then he goes, "Abby, is that you?" Like, so are you just so used to her having this demon voice now that you think that's how she sounds?
Yeah, and the demon even says like, "I got your wife here," or something like that, and then that in that realm, and he's like, "Abby, that's you."
That dude, shout out to Emmett. That guy's hilarious. But yeah, and then after he gets off the phone, he calls back home where he is trying to get in touch with Dr. Williams. The brother answers and he's like, "Oh, you're there at the house?" He's like, Did my dad explain everything?" And he's like, "Yeah, he explained everything about what's going on." And so he's like, "Well, where are you?" And he's like, "I don't know. It sounded like I heard some dance type music or something in the background. Maybe she's at a bar." It's like, "Abby doesn't drink." And I'm like, "Well, that's what I heard." So the brother decides to go meet up with Abby's brother decides to go meet up with Emmett, and Dr. Williams is like, "No, I have to stay here." So they end up meeting up. They end up, or actually, sorry, before we see them meet up, Dr. Williams actually goes to the church as he's like kind of prepping some stuff, and you just see that like giant cross that he was given earlier in the movie. So you can kind of foreshadow, or that foreshadows that that's going to play some type of importance. And then we get Abby, and she's in the bar actually talking to that gentleman who she attacked at the church that day that she was choking, and she's telling him, "Hey, I'm sorry for everything that I did," like yada yada yada. And then that's when we get Emmett and Abby's brother as they get together and they start hitting up different bars.
Yeah, so she's flirting with this person from the church. I believe he's like a coroner. I didn't get to catch his name. But when she's talking to him, she's like, "Do you still have your hearse?" And he's like, "No, I got a limo now." So that's kind of, I guess, that's where I put two and two together. I could definitely be wrong, and I do apologize about that. But anyway, she's flirting with them, and he offers to take her home because he knows that she doesn't drink. He knows that he's this reverend's wife and that she shouldn't really be in this bar. But when they get into the car, she's like, "Oh, who said I want to go home?" And he's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And then it cuts to a scene where they're doing the do in his car, and he says something about God, and he's really enjoying it. He's like, "Oh God," and she's like, "Why do you have to bring religion into this?" And she hops off of him, and she starts going crazy. The demon starts coming out, and he starts getting scared, and then it kind of says like, "I'm gonna turn." The demon says, "I'm gonna turn your head around," and we get a flash of, like, I guess it's the Eshu demon, and we get these little flashes, and it's throughout the movie too. When this demon is like doing the winds and so forth, we get a flash of the demon face, and it cuts to a shot of outside the car, and then you see smoke just like fuming out of the windows of the car, and the whole time the demon's saying like, "I'm gonna kill you," enjoying the kill, just kind of like how it was with Mrs. Wiggins when he killed, or he or she killed her earlier.
Yeah, and that's when we end up getting where Emmett and the brother, they actually go to the bar that Abby is apparently at. Emmett ends up talking to like or sorry, not Emmett, the brother talks to like a bartender. Is like, "You seen this girl?" It's like, "Yeah, she said she was gonna be back later." Okay, so they kind of sit down and chill. We get where it ends up kind of like fast forwarding a little bit, and Abby is there at the bar as Emmett's in the bathroom, and she's there with these two guys, and she's like being very touchy with them, very flirty, and Emmett comes out of the bathroom and he ends up spotting them, and he's like, runs over there and he's like, come on, Abby, we gotta go. And she's like, what are you doing? Leave me alone. And he's like, I'm your husband. And she's like, I'm ain't no wife. Do you see a ring on this finger? Which she threw out the ring when she was messing with the corner dude, which, by the way, I didn't know what a corner was. I know corner is a band. I had no idea was like a church related dude. So learned something today. And then, yeah, that's what happens when metal dudes relate everything to music. And these two guys are basically there, and like Abby's kind of just talking real down on Emmett, and this one guy kind of steps up. I think he's like the dude that had like the Jerry curl kind of look, and he was like, oh, do you need me to take care of this guy? And next thing you know, which this part didn't make any sense to me. How is this? I don't know. So each of those two guys grab an arm and hold him in like a T pose while Abby's just taking off his clothes.
Yeah, they're holding him and she's throwing drinks in his face, and there's a crowd. Everybody in the bar is literally just crowded around them, just watching her do this to him. And this is where Cass comes back in. He had actually gone to the office of that bar to contact Garnett, tell him, which is Dr. Williams, sorry, and tell them that they're at a bar and Dr. Williams is headed right over. And he's really talking to the owner of the bar, discussing what he saw Abby doing, what was, why Abby was there. And then he comes back into the main part of the bar and he sees what's going on. He sees this crowd and he's trying to get through. And he can't because everyone's just kind of pushing him off. So then he pops a couple shots of his gun into the air and he says, everyone needs to evacuate. You need to get everybody out of here, when he's talking to the owner. So then after that, the only people that are left are the two guys that were holding down Emmett, Abby, and then there's a few others that stick around, but I guess they're not really scared of this cop. And this demon comes out and she's saying, you guys are gonna let this cop, try to control you, and really just trying to egg a fight on.
Yeah, the demon ends up tossing the brother down, or she zaps him with like, which is also weird. So she has like supernatural powers, obviously, but she hit him with the who was it? Was it Frieza from Dragon Ball Z? The little spark stuck out the finger. Just gave my boy. She gave my boy the Frieza before Frieza was a thing, and then she ends up tossing what's that boy's name? Emmett to the side, and then the guy, the Jerry Crow guy, comes and he's like, basically like, oh, let's get out of here. And she's like, I don't need you. And she throws him across the bar too. And it's so funny because the way that he gets thrown, it's not like he got thrown very hard, but when he hits the floor, he's just out as if he was like dead. He was just like, And so other patrons like grab that guy and they all try and exit. And she's telling them like, I don't need either one of you. I need I need Dr. Williams. But she tells she tells Emmett, like, when I'm done with Dr. Williams, I could come back for you, and all this kind of like nonsense. And then as she's doing that, that's when Dr. Williams shows up, and right away he was about that action. He pulled out that giant cross and it just flashed, and Abby like tried to turn around and run away, but the cross or whatever was too strong, so it started to wither her away a little bit. And Dr. Williams tells Emmett and Abby's brother, he's like, apprehend her, grab her. And so each of the guys end up going to try and grab her.
Yeah, and she's there kind of like looking almost paralyzed in a T-pose, and when they try to go and grab her, they get shocked again, and he's like, no, grab her. So they go again and they grab her, but she becomes too powerful and she throws him off. And Dr. Williams is praying while the demon is saying different things. And it's just really, most of this scene is really just that. He's praying and the demon's just kind of like, no, you can't control me. those kinds of things. And so while that happens, they the Emmett and Cass are told by Dr. Williams again to really grab her and spread her out like a cross. This is the most effective way. And the demon really brings out Abby again to try to appeal to Emmett to let her go. But the whole time, Dr. Williams is saying, "Don't cave in. Listen to me. You got to listen to my voice. Don't listen to this demon." And Dr. Williams says, "This point, I think, is more important than the rest of the exorcism, because this Dr. Williams starts saying, this is not the real issue. You're not as powerful as you think. You're really just a small spirit, and you're not powerful. You can't really do all the things that you think you can do."
Yeah, and that's where because it's never really explained in the movie that is this Eshu, is this not? So by him saying that you're not the real Eshu, that's the only inkling that we get of maybe this is some type of demon or spirit that is similar to Eshu, that's maybe trying to pretend to be this powerful Eshu spirit to, I guess, cling on to someone's body to come to Earth, or come back to life. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it was definitely confusing because the whole time I'm believing it's Eshu, and then he starts saying it's not. So I start believing it's really not. But I also just kind of trick myself. Like, what if he's just saying that to get Eshu, to leave, or prove like that this is really Eshu, or different things like that. Like, he's just calling it out, trying to make it angry so that it would leave Abby's body or something. It's just definitely a lot of confusion there. It really just doesn't get to the point saying or confirming whether it's Eshu or not. So yeah, so at this point he's really just egging this demon on, whether it's Eshu or not, and saying that it's not powerful. And this demon tries to prove that it's Eshu by speaking like different languages, and Dr. Williams comes back and saying those languages are basically rubbish. You don't know what you're saying. And then the demon goes back again saying that, "Oh, well, how would you know? You're not a real, you're not really who you say you are either. You don't know how to speak these different languages. You don't know anything about the culture where I'm from and stuff like that." So then Dr. Williams proves that he can speak another language as well.
Yeah, he starts speaking that language, and this whole exorcism has taken so long, man. It's a really, really long scene. It didn't really need to be that long. We get that part where the demon levitates, and Dr. Williams says, down, and it goes down. It's totally, totally weird. The part that we get to where it seems like he tries different things to get the demon or the spirit out of Abby's body, and nothing's really working. He tries the thing where they all go form hands together, and we get the camera angle where it kind of illuminates, so you think that this is going to work because they're all powers together, but it doesn't work. And when Dr. Williams puts on my dumbass thought it was a poncho at first, but he puts on this like kind of African tribal-esque kind of overcoat type of thing with one of the hats as well, and he has this weird powder type stuff, and he ends up saying some type of verse, blows the powder right over the demon, and you see the Abby just kind of start doing the whole like, the spirits getting out of her. It looks like her smoking's going up, and that's when Dr. Williams, he knows that the demon's gone because he's already taken off the poncho, and he's taken off the hat, and you see the brother check for her pulse, and he says she's alive, and that's when we get Abby coming back to normal, and basically the end of the movie pretty much, because that last scene wasn't important at all.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know. I guess I just want to talk more about this ending of the exorcism, because you were right. Like, most of this the beginning part of it just really was unnecessary. It felt like he was just trying different things, and it was just kind of filler to this. Probably scene right here is maybe the last 30 minutes of the movie, and it's only like an hour and 30 minutes total. So so it was definitely a long scene, and he tries the different stuff. He throws the powder and stuff. He has those African ceremonial robes, I guess you can call them, and the whole time the demon's like trying to get Emmett and Cass to let it go, so that. And then I guess that light scene, I thought that was pretty interesting because they're grabbing hands, and of course it's like CGI'd in, and this like blue light illuminates all three, Emmett, Cass, and Dr. Williams, and it feels like they're gaining power. It feels like, they're gaining that energy from God specifically, and it just goes away. He's like, "Oh, y'all can let go. Y'all can let go now." And then he starts throwing the powder and does different things like that. It was just very interesting to me to see that process of it, and how, when they wrote this movie, what they were thinking an exorcism was like.
Honestly, I think that the creator of this film was probably seeing into the future, like, because we got where Abby did the Frieza finger, and they came together like they were trying to be like Gohan and Trunks and fusion together, man.
Okay, yeah, there you go. This is just Dragon Ball Z is based off of Abby.
This is Dragon Ball Abby. She's DLC coming to Dragon Ball Fighters. You heard it here first, folks. Gruesome Task podcast.
Yeah. So anyway, this isn't the end of the scene. At the end of it, Dr. Williams just kind of like packs his things while Emmett is really worried for his wife, checking her pulse, seeing if she's alive, and he just kind of packs his whole thing. He looks back right before he exits the bar, and then his son Emmett just kind of says "Father," and I forgot to point this out. But throughout the whole movie, he's calling his dad father the whole time. He doesn't use anything else when referring to him. It's just father. And it kind of confused me as well, because I know that's his dad, but his dad's also a bishop or reverend, that type of figure as well. So I don't know if he was referring to it in a religious way, or if it was really just the dad way.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. I never like got that from it at all.
Yeah, I know it's not important, but that's just what my process was, because I noticed that throughout the movie. But anyway, so the dad leaves, and then it cuts to a scene where we see an airplane just kind of go across the scene. Another kind of useless filler thing. And then we get Emmett, and he's at an airport getting tickets, and then he goes and meets Mama Porter, and this scene right here, I don't know why, but they cut the dialogue and there's no sound of them talking between Emmett and Mama Porter, which I thought was weird. And then we get Abby running up to him, and the dialogue just immediately cuts back in, and she's like, "Oh, hey." And they're saying goodbye to Mama Porter, and they get on a plane, and that's the end of the movie.
Completely useless last scene. The only reason I think that maybe that was added in was because they wanted you to have that happy ending where it's, oh, they're going on vacation now and they're happily ever after. But in my opinion, the final scene should have been that little interaction with Emmett and his father, Dr. Williams, where he says, father, and, the Dr. Williams does like the little nod to him. I think that should have been the final scene.
Yeah, definitely. Right before it cuts to that airplane thing, you see Emmett like cradling his wife, and it looks very touching. It's very compelling. Like they went through a lot with this exorcism, and now they're just going on vacation. Like in the next scene, like we don't know if that's the next day or what, but it was definitely useless, and it just didn't sit right with me either.
Yeah, weird stuff, but I'm glad this movie's over. This movie was trash.
All right, you said it. What are you gonna give the rating, sir?
So we talked about this a little bit before. we talked about this a little bit in the beginning before we started filming, and last week I completely annihilated Death by Temptation. This movie was worse than Death by Temptation. This movie right here, folks, was a McDonald's value meal size piece of ass. This movie was trash, man. The best part about the movie was getting to hear Dr. Williams speak, my man Blackula, because he's got such a powerful voice, and it's like, besides that, whoever wrote this, how did this movie make this movie is trash. I'm giving this, I'm sorry, yo, I'm giving it a shot glass sized pint of blood, man.
A shot glass, like 0.5, you saying?
A shot, see, no, half a pint is more than a shot glass. This is getting a shot glass because all you gotta do is take a shot and it's over. You ain't gotta deal with it, my brother.
All right. I don't necessarily agree with you there. I think I'm gonna give this 3.5 for me. I do like this a little bit better than Death by Temptation. For me, the story just flowed a little bit more. The acting was way better than the acting from last. I think the makeup for Abby when she became this demon was really good. But I mean, other than that, it was definitely a terrible movie. It was a lot of filler. It was a lot of the last exorcism scene in general. Like, I know it's supposed to be just, a ripoff of the exorcism and stuff, but it was just too long, and it felt unnecessary to see Dr. Williams go through that whole process. I don't know. I didn't like it. I didn't like it just in general, but I do think it was slightly better than Death by Temptation.
You're crazy. Death by Temptation is a way better film than this movie. Like,
I don't agree. I really don't agree. I absolutely hated the acting in Death by Temptation.
The acting in this movie was worse.
There's no way. You just gave credit to Abby and Dr. Williams.
But that's because Dr. Williams is a god. He's Blackula. No one touches him. He's the all-time great. I want to go back and watch more movies that he was in because I enjoy his acting and I like the way his voice sounds. Abby, yes, she did a good job. However, the writing in this movie is worse than Death by Temptation. Also, the kills I feel like if we're taking the demon or spirit, whatever you want to say, the demon of Abby is worse than the demon of the chick from the last movie. Way worse. I'll take the other girl all day over Abby.
I don't know. I don't agree with that. I really don't agree with that. That was just a sex-filled movie, man. Let's be honest. That was just nothing but sex in that last movie. And I get there was hints of it. There was hints of it. There was hints of it. There was one sex scene in this movie. There was like 4 in the first 10 minutes of Death by Temptation.
Okay, look, like I know I'm looped, but that doesn't mean that's not saying why Death by Temptation is better. First off, you're telling me that this movie we're literally dealing with what is considered a sex demon. The last movie, sort of similar, but it was to get to the last of the bloodline in the other one. This one was just this one.
No, that's the same thing happened in this one. He's trying to get to Dr. Williams.
But Dr. Williams ain't the last in the bloodline, though.
Okay, I agree with that, but there was some revenge for Dr. Williams. There was some motive for this demon. You can't say there wasn't.
Fair enough. But still, I'll take Death by Temptation over it. How are you gonna compare this movie where this movie was ass? How are you gonna compare this movie to the last movie when my man's freaking with the fire pickup lines? How are you gonna the movie earned 3 stars alone or 2 stars alone for the nuclear booty line? Like, come on, man.
See, that's all that matters in that movie. You take away that line, that movie is worse than this one.
I'll still take it over.
Come on. All right. Agree to disagree. We're not going to keep going. You know where we both stand. That's all. It's just really up to the audience now. We'll put up a poll or something and see.
Yeah, after this episode's been out, before the next one drops, so we'll do it around like Thursday or so. We're going to have what's better, Abby or Death by Temptation?
That'll be really good. Nah, there's no way it's Abby.
Death by Temptation.
I feel like a lot of people are going to lean towards Death by Temptation, but that's only because I don't know. I feel like people are gonna lean towards Death by Temptation just because it's. I guess I definitely think it can be a little bit more enjoyable because of the lines and the more recent generation. And the guys wearing Jordans and they're in New York during that time in the early '90s. But I don't know. There's a lot of people who are different. So
Yeah, so go ahead. Shot glass size pint of blood. Hit us with fun facts.
all right. So the fun facts are definitely way more enjoyable than this whole movie alone. We're gonna start it off here. So this film was filmed in Louisville, Kentucky, and that was really just the setting for the whole movie as well. So the production was actually temporarily halted when a series of tornadoes came through Louisville in April when it was being filmed. That's crazy. And then you go into this next fact here. There were more instances of bad luck here that it says. The actor Terry Carter, who played Emmett, actually broke his ribs filming one scene. And I'm assuming it's one of the scenes where he got thrown or something. And then you go into the next one here. Carol Speed, who played Abby, every time she appeared on set dressed as the demon, the generators for the whole set would fail. So there's just bad luck on top of bad luck on top of bad luck. So the exorcism part of this movie really just carried over into the real life when they filmed it.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about that, and I thought that was pretty interesting. I think it was the director or someone that was working on the film had talked about afterwards, saying that he believes that Abby or the actress that played Abby just hyped up all that weird stuff to try and make it seem similar to The Exorcist and to get more buys from the film and stuff. Which if it is hyped up a little bit, I appreciate it. She's working the film.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you grossed $4 million off of this $100,000 budget, so anything you can do to sell your movie, I would do it. The same thing. But we'll go into the next fact here. I thought this was really interesting. So, Warner Bros. Actually sued American International, claiming that this movie Abby was a complete ripoff of the film The Exorcist, which obviously there you see every poster. It's literally just blaxploitation of The Exorcist. Those words are literally word for word in most of the posters and most of the advertising for this film. So, it also says here that the film was very profitable. Obviously, the $4 million, and that was only in its first month of release. The director, producer William Girdler never saw a penny of it because of the lawsuit, and then it actually settled shortly before he died in 1978. So he never really got a penny off of this film.
Which sucks, man. Even though we didn't necessarily enjoy the film, that doesn't mean that obviously the people that worked on the film and were a part of it, they obviously were passionate about it and put in a lot of effort. So the fact that he didn't get to see any money from it does suck.
Yeah, definitely. And I was reading a lot, or before this, I was researching more about why it was so hard to find this film in general. And that's really because a lot of the, they got rid of all the theatrical film for this movie. So when Warner Bros. Sued them, they made sure that theatrical film was done with completely. And then, what else did it say? Oh, I was also reading that there were other spin-offs, other rip-offs of The Exorcist during this time. And there was just so many because of how popular The Exorcist was, especially in Europe. But Warner Bros. Only sued this film, which I thought was really interesting as well.
Yeah, it's why did you go after this one now? Of course, we can make assumptions of maybe they went after it because this film was actually doing quite well in its first month. Maybe it's because it was all black actors and actresses. I mean, we don't really know unless you speak to someone at Warner, but I just feel like they should have left it. I mean, you think about modern day, there's so many films that are big, and then all these crazy spin-offs. Like, I'm sure if you go down the line, there's an insane number of spin-offs for, you know, Paranormal Activity and all these other type of popular movies, Insidious and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I found this. Check this out. I was looking on the Flicks of Net the other day, and like, there's movies that are ripoffs of Annabelle, and they're called The Doll. And I was like, really? And then I looked, and there's a Doll too.
Oh my
That means the movie was so popular, they said, let's do a Doll too. And I mean, I guarantee you that the creators of Annabelle weren't like, oh yeah, we got to get this off of Netflix. And obviously it was straight to like streaming DVD. Nobody's watching that garbage in the films, in the theaters. But like, and you don't see them saying, oh, we got to take this down. No, because they realize 75 to 80%, probably 90% of people, to be honest, aren't going to watch The Doll. They're going to watch the Annabelle series. It's so popular. And it should have been, it's the same way with The Exorcist. Like, yes, Abby was doing well. However, The Exorcist was a legendary movie. People are going to want that. So,
Yeah, I mean, there's all we can do is just assume what happened, and really, then you just don't necessarily want to because you don't know what is really correct or not. But it's definitely heartbreaking to know that these people worked so hard and earned so much money, but never really saw the dime of it, and their film, is very hard to find now. Like, it's just it sucks. It really does suck going through all that work and having it, and to be the only one when there are so many different ripoffs. It's infuriating for me knowing that, especially. And I'm glad we definitely touched on this movie, even though we didn't like it. To learn more about that, and like Deonte touched on before, it could be a race thing, but it also couldn't. But I'm definitely glad we touched on this. I guess just one more fact that I wanted to give out here was Carol Speed, who played Abby, only landed the part after the original actress demanded a masseuse. But since the budget was so low, they got rid of that original actress and brought in Carol Speed for that. And it says here, Speed's agent recommended her to the director, and she flew to Louisville, meeting the director right there on the set when they were already filming. So I thought that was pretty interesting as well, to get rid of that actress just because she demanded something that they couldn't afford. So,
which is hilarious. A masseuse of all things, not more money, not sparkling water on the set. Give me a masseuse.
Yeah, I really don't understand that, and it doesn't give me a name of who that original actress was, but I can't imagine her career, spiked after not doing this film.
Oh yeah, that's why she was never heard from again. Word got around that any set she needs, she's gonna need a masseuse, and they're like, "No, we're good, we're out."
What if it's like, the actress from like Sugar Hill or something crazy like that?
That'd be pretty crazy. That would be kind of crazy,
right? It was just some big known actress, and now it's because they couldn't afford it. They couldn't afford her. It's gone now.
All right. Well, I know you said that was the last fun fact. Did you have anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, I really didn't. In regards to the film, no. I think that's pretty much it. We wrapped it up. You heard what we had to say to it. You can go watch it if you want to. It's free on YouTube. I mean, just go take a look at it if you're very curious and want to argue with us, or if we ever put that poll up, what your opinions are. But it's very hard to recommend this. Very, very hard.
Oh yeah, for sure. So please give this a watch. Let us know what you think, because I want to argue with you. I like to argue. So if you think that this movie is better than Death by Temptation, pull up with the hands.
I will. I will definitely do that.
talking to you. I was talking to the listeners, but you can pull up.
No,
too.
I'm doing it anyways. You forget the listeners. I'm doing it anyways.
Alrighty, folks. Well, with that, we hope you did enjoy this episode. We had a lot of fun talking about it. Even though we didn't enjoy the film, I think that those are honestly the best episodes because we can kind of go back and forth and criticize it a little bit. But as always, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you do leave us a review, we will talk about it on the show, as well as follow us on Instagram at Gruesome Task Podcast, and then on Twitter at The Gruesome Task. For myself, you can follow me on Instagram at Gruesome, or at Gruesome Task. No, at Deonte, and on Twitter at _under the knife.
Yeah, and you can find me on Instagram at j.a.gallegos and on Twitter at Spirit Jose. I guess before we cut out here, I just wanted to touch on the real world issues. I know we're doing a lot of blaxploitation films and really just focusing on a lot of black in horror. Support the Black Lives Matter movement. You know, go out and support that. It's very, very heartbreaking that people are still, you know, being killed by these police, and it's just heartbreaking. I can't even begin to wrap my mind around what's going on in the world right now. And at this time, it's happening here in San Antonio as well. Do everything you can, support as much as you can, and really just be there for your black friends, family, co-workers if you have that as well, and just, you know, be there. Really put your pride aside and support this. I can't stress that enough.
100% agreed. And also, to Kyle Rittenhouse, go fuck yourself.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
How many pints of blood are you drinking?
Life sucks, and then you die.